All right, hey guys, Sam here. Good day to take a look at what's happening in Bitcoin. And I'm going to kind of have a theme today. We're going to focus on Andrew's median lines and some of the four major trading principles. And depending on how much time I can get this done within, I'll show you a couple of different examples. I do try and keep these under half an hour so that they just aren't too burdensome to try and get through. But anyway, so here, this is the count is difficult in Bitcoin right now. So I have two counts, and I don't really have a bias of one to the other. So I'll call them count one and count two. And I always encourage people to keep an alternate count, because right now we are at a spot where we cannot be definitive about one of these counts over the other. We have a couple of different possibilities, and certainly one of them is that we have a temporary top in here that would complete a 5-wave sequence, right? So in white here, you can see the potential, and then we finish with an ending diagonal, which is extreme. There's no doubt about it. But we cannot discount this as a possibility. So this is certainly one of the counts here that remains valid. Now, how would we invalidate it and end up relabeling? Well, we'd need a push to new highs. And with Bitcoin, that can happen at any time. But until we see that, we have to allow for the possibility that we are just starting what would be a more significant correction. So take note here now, if we complete, in white here, if we are completing a 5-wave structure, if I can get this right on it, then we're looking for the 50% for the next wave 2, right? So this, and we've got this cluster zone here that we ran into around 7%, so, or 7,000, excuse me. So this would be a potential target. Here's the 38. We don't want to discount that either. But ideally, if we're indeed going to be putting in a second wave, if this remains as at least our interim temporary high until this correction is complete, and we don't know that it isn't complete now, but if this is going to be a deeper correction, this is the area that you would want to start looking, right? And of course, watching for what happens at significant fib levels. But the structure that develops as we move down, if we move down, would of course influence our decision-making process as we approach any of these key fib levels. But let's open it up a little bit here and see, why I'm suggesting that this is still. We cannot be definitive about whether or not we're out of the woods here, whether this correction is over. So if indeed we've got a top here, we would be expecting a 3-wave structure, right? We trend in 5s, we correct in 3s. So given that, we can certainly see we have the potential for a 3-3-5, right? So we've got an ABC into an A. We've got an ABC potentially now into a B wave looking for a C. Now, again, as we've seen many times, the C wave potentially, there are a couple that we've seen a lot of this. We've seen a lot of that. But I would propose to you that if we're going to make a deeper correction, we'd be looking for the C wave down here, perhaps in conjunction with this prior resistance level here. So given that, so how would we attempt to analyze that? Well, we'd look for the relationship between the A wave to the B. We know a B wave can go anywhere from the 50. Note the A wave of this ABC goes right to the 50. But we can go anywhere from the 618 to from the 50 to the 786. This is not unreasonable. So even though it looks like we may be breaking towards new highs here, we have that potential certainly as we go down to lower time frames. Got to pay attention to this. So this is, here I'm on Bitstamp, but it's going to be very similar regardless of what exchange you're on. So you would certainly want to draw up that 786 and perhaps put an alert on the other side of it. So just to be conscious of the fact that if we're going to push towards new highs, I'd want to know about that, potentially invalidating this count. But as I open this up, we'd also want to consider the relationships between this A wave and this B wave, right? So here's the 100, and we've wicked through that. Also a common target for a C wave relative to the A wave is the 1272, square root of 1618, and you can see that overlapping, giving us a little confluence. So we certainly have the potential here for confluence. We have the it would stay as an internal retracement from the swing high here to the A low. 786 would be a tell for a potential B wave. We've got a fib, potentially a fib relationship here between the A, B, C. So this is certainly something that I want to be paying attention to. Do we react at this level? Do we push through and get to new highs? Take note of this, that up above, if we're going to stay with the fib relationships from the A to the B, here's the 61875 window, which, you know, also, right? I mean, there's nothing says we couldn't double top here, right? So, you know, you got to be alert to all of the possibilities. So how do we get more clarity or potentially look for trading opportunities? Well, recognizing that this is potentially unfolding here. Let's go down to the hourly and see what that looks. So here it is on the 1 hour, and I'm switching exchanges here. This is over to Kraken, but this is the 60-minute. Now here's the bullish scenario. So if indeed we have some sort of top here, and we may be relabeling this as a third, because this certainly has the characteristics of a fourth wave, much more so than anything we saw with regards to the current count, which we had this in this very shallow four. This is much more typical of a fourth wave, this complexity. And since we had a very simple, Elliott's rule of alternation, since we had a very simple correction here in the two wave, the fact that we have complexity here should not come as any surprise. So we looked at this yesterday. So we've had the multiple taps to and through, then back, and then tapping the median line before we move here. It appears that we could make a strong case that we have moved into an impulsive structure. If that's the case, then we again see this triangle, this triangular pattern, a triangle for the ABC. You can see here, this was kind of a tell here. So we got the 786 on that 2, so pulling from the C low to potentially the 1 high, we get again confluence here. We get the Vegas wave, we get the median line, we get the 786, and we have the potential for a pattern to be in play here because we get subdivision in that 1 wave, giving us potentially a leading diagonal, which would qualify this because there's 5 waves in it, as potentially a 1 wave, right, where we can find a leading diagonal into a 2. Again, 2 like a B wave can go anywhere from the 50 to the 786. And you can see here, first we tap the 50, then we stall at the 618. We get through and we pop down to tap the median line. And as I showed you yesterday, we also had the 618 of the A wave. So if I project from that, so here's the 618 here on the potential C wave. So everything is there potentially for this to continue to unfold. And you can see here, this may well be what we experience. What's our tell? Well, we want to see an impulsive move here to get to our third. So let me open this up. So if we've got a complete A, then we get the ABC into our B. We do get 5 waves down into a C, right? So for that triangle pattern. And now we've got a 1, 2. If this is going to be an impulse wave, we're looking for the subdivision in that third. Here's potentially the third of the third, right? So if we've got that, then we certainly want to be paying attention to these ones. Right? We want to look for these ones to hold. So looking here now, we can look at this and say, okay, well, that certainly appears that we've got a nice little 1, 2, 3, 4, giving us an impulse within the larger degree here in white. So if we were to measure that, where's our high probability zone for our third? Taking it from the length of 1, projected from the low of 2, right up here. All right, so you see we get this little confluence zone. So this is potentially where we'd be targeting and looking for the third right here. And you see we've also got some confluence there. Here's the negative 100, the extreme of the 786, right? So for the algo pull and targets. So we get a little confluence zone here. So if indeed we're going to move from where we sit right here is potentially a fourth into that target zone, into that hot box, then we've got setting up, right? Then we can be a little more confident in a potential fourth to take us into a fifth for a new all-time high. All right, so that's a very, very possible, very realistic potential scenario and roadmap for Bitcoin here that would just play out beautifully. Right, so there's nothing here to invalidate this count. So on the hourly, you know, I'm leaning towards this count here, given what we're seeing here. But this is not the only way this could be counted, and this is just the reality of trading, of using Elliott wave. There are always alternates, right? So we're always looking to be prepared for an alternate count, and we're looking to eliminate alternate possibilities based on the price action. So a move here up to the third would give us more confidence that this in white degree here, this 1, 2, 3 is impulsive. We've got all the tells that we would look for. But we're not there yet. This is just, we're just projecting. And then ideally we'd see the 4 come back, maybe back towards the upper parallel here from our median line. Here's our wave 1 high. We would want to see that we would want to see the wave 1 high of that degree not be violated. So interestingly, it comes right to the median line. So if we were to get that, if I pull this off, so if we get the 3 there, just for the exercise, let's look at it. We'd be pulling from our 2. Let's say we get the 618. Okay, note where the 50 comes in. Right, so here's the 50 right here. So again, confluence. So we have the 50 coming in a few ticks above the wave 1 high. Right, so potentially a perfect setup for a 4th to take us into our 5th, and we're off again to new highs. Right, so then we'd be projecting from the length of 1, from the 4 for new targets up here. Here's the 2618 up at over 12,000. So very realistic scenario. One of the possible counts and roadmaps that could be well be playing here. But to get that, to confirm that, we need this 5th on the smaller degree here in green. We need that to play. We need this push higher, and we need to break that 786. That would be significant here as we looked at it on the 4-hour. We need to get up and through this resistance here, the 1272 of the A to B, and the 786 from the pull from the high to the low here, potentially our A low. We need that target up here, right, to give us more confidence. If we go down to the 15-minute, we get potentially another alternate. Now here's the alternate count that is also bullish, allowing for this huge move here to play as a third, which certainly, at first glance, that would be your immediate assumption that because of the strength of that, how quickly and ferociously that moved, that would imply an impulsive move and thus a third wave. So in doing the relabeling here, to allow for that third, and again, I'm down here on the, I'm on the 60-minute here again with the relabeling. Pardon me. I thought I was on the 15, but I've got this on the hourly. So we potentially have the 3, 4, 5 of a 1. Here's the question mark. This is a very, very shallow 2. Not unheard of. Not unheard of. It could be the case. It's very, very shallow. So if that's a complete 5-wave structure, which I think we get a little expanded flat here, and we've seen that before. Given that ABC, we don't even make the 23.6. So unusually shallow 2. Right? Wouldn't be the first time in trading history that's happened, but it's unusual, right? It's outside of statistical norms. So given that, we do get a little bit of confluence here. We've got the prior resistance here offering some support. We've got the Vegas wave. I don't love it, but it certainly it certainly plays. It certainly makes sense. Well, if that's our 3, then we would be looking for complexity here. We have a simple and shallow 2. Rule of alternation, we're looking for that tendency for the 2 and the 4 to alternate from simple to complex. Well, the other scenario here is that we have a triangle, a true triangle, not just a shallow C, but that we get a DE, giving us a complex triangle correction into a 4th here. This also plays. If that's the case, then we have a 1, 2, 3. What are we looking for? We're looking for that third to get into that high probability zone, the 1618 to the 175 window. Then we're looking for the 4 to come down and not overlap our wave 1 high. So if I wick this for you, right? So we want that 4 to stay above that, implying that we are now in an impulsive move higher, heading to complete on a larger scale the 5th, and I don't have those targets measured here yet because we're trying to decide what we're in. This potentially would be the 1 wave of the 5th wave, which could push this much, much higher. Right? If that's 1 in white here, 1, 2, 3, complex correction into excuse me, a triangle for a 4, then we're just starting what potentially would be, so from here we'd have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going up. Let me put the wave on it so you can kind of see what I'm trying to get at here. So potentially we put in a 1 wave of this 5th wave, and then we'd look for the 2, right? We know a 2. Then we're measuring for the 2 because now we can identify it as a second wave. So we're now looking for the higher probability zones between 50 and 618. Right? Even though we saw this very shallow 2, this would start to firm up as the primary count, looking for a 1, 2, and then off to a 3, 4, 5 to complete this 3, 4, 5 here of the larger degree. Let me put that in a larger degree so you get the idea, right? Do you see that? So that's the potential roadmap here if indeed this is going to play as our 1 wave and this is going to be our triangle 4th. Not uncommon. Often seen in a 4th wave. I like this count. This makes sense to me. The only thing I don't like is this shallow 2. But, you know, I mean, it plays, right? So it certainly could be the case, and we have, you know, this would give us, you know, the reason this is so important here is not only for the opportunity to be here and here, but getting a sense of where this entire 5-wave structure completes, because that will affect our next entry. Because again, if that completes as a 5-wave sequence, you see that, then we're looking for the pull. We're looking for the 50. If this completes a 5-wave, we're now looking for the 50 as a potential 2-wave as a minimum. All right, does that make sense? Okay, now there are a few other things that I wanted to show you here that relate to this triangle. So I'm going to open this up. I've got it over here. Just some good things to pay attention to. So here it is with the median line. I'm going to take this one off to show you where median lines can be really useful. So this is, you know, again, we're going back and forth between counts, but note here, because this is what the algos will do, right? So because you can program this. So if I take my median line and I work from my A low to my B here, well, that's too steep, of course, right? So let's take off some of the outside big numbers here. Let's take off the 2. All right, so clearly that's too steep. So I'm going to go through my alternates and see what happens. Well, that's interesting to me. Okay, so we know that one of the Andrews median line trading principles is that with 3 good pivots, we have a very high probability that from this, I call it the corner pocket trade, that we have an 80% probability of this from this swing here, because I've got 3 pivots, it works, you know, up or down. We have an 80% probability of making the median line. Okay, which we do. And if we don't pivot right on it, we hover before moving the opposite direction. Right? So this is part of the case that we build for this to be an A, B, C, and this to be a 1, 2, 3. Right? So it's part of that process, the deductive reasoning, if you will, as to why we pivot here. Right? And then of course, as I just showed you, we had this 618 here. Right? So we had on that high, right? So we had the 618 potentially setting up as a C wave with the pop of the median line, right? So let's take that off and say, okay, well, there's one set of pivots. Well, now let's open it up again. So if I'm going to go back the other direction, I'm going to pull from here to here. Now I'm going to pull here. Now I've got the shift on that, so I'm going to go back to original. Look at that. Not quite. Let's look at the modified shift. Okay, so that's interesting to me. So from here, so here it is again, right? Even though we've modified it, we have an 80% probability of making the median line, and we get right to it. Okay, and that's the pivot. So looking at that, then we pull the other way. You know, we're to and through by a tick or two, if I've got that right on it. The 618, 65 window, it just barely squeaks through, but then we come back down, and in this case, we come to the Vegas wave, but this was the pull that we looked at where we were considering this as a potential 1, 2, right? And there's our 7, 8, 6. So we've got that pivot. All right, and at this point, we're not to the outside edge, but it would be a very real scenario to anticipate a return to the median line here before getting that 1, 2, 3, 4, and up for a 5. All right, so we want to consider that, but we want to pull again. So we'd pull from here to here to here, go back to original. So look at that. We got modified. Let's go to original. Okay, so interesting. So as you can see now, we've come back from, we didn't make the quite make the outside edge. Make sure I've got these dialed in. We're hovering here at the median line. So first rip. So here it was again. Here's my corner pocket. 80% probability of making the median line. Bang. Right? Take note here. That's from 9,500 to 10-1. That's $600 swing. Okay, so these are not just little mini swings. We get to react back down. Now we're to and through, and we go up and we challenge the upper parallel. Now we're back to hovering. It would not be uncharacteristic for this to come back here. We're right in the box. Right, to come back to the outside edge, and you set up potentially another corner pocket trade, right, for a return to the median line. Do you see that? So it's important to see what kind of reaction we get every time we come to the median line. What do we get? What happens? And then, of course, we're pulling as well for fib relationships from each of these pivots. So even though I've got the reverse here, so I'm going to pull here to my high. So I'm going to take this one off. And I'm going to take this one off because we're to and through those. We'll note where the 50 comes in, right, which we know is where algos like to buy it. Here's my wave 1 high. 1, 2, 3, potentially a 4, although 38 is also to be considered. But it's a question of how and when, right? Because we get a time component with the median line. Is it here? Is it here? Right? Are we just going to do this? Are we just going to hover here at the median line, go up to that target before coming back to the median line or back down here? Right? So it's giving you that the market's geometry as it moves based on how it responds to the median line based on these probabilities. Right? So I've actually got to tighten that up. So let me get this dialed in, which you need to do. Right, there we go. So boom, 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 hovering at the median line, hovering. Right, which is commonly seen for the market. It's deciding here. There's question. Are we going to come back to the outside edge, come to the 50? This would be a very reasonable trade to be making right there with the expectation. So we get a target. We get the algo target. There's the negative 23, but we also get the median line. All right, and it's a question of when do we get there? Here, here, here. You see that? Right? So you're framing the markets based on these pivots. We're framing up the geometry of the market as it moves. So we're combining the algo pulls and targets, the Elliott price pattern, repeating that repetition of how the market moves through human emotion, fear and greed, and putting that all together and saying, can I find low risk, high reward entries that take advantage of what I'm seeing here in the market's geometry, because we know how consistent it is. So if I'm here, this is absolutely a buy here. Absolutely. So what kind of risk reward do we get? So if I pull that up with my first target, I don't really need to be too, I don't really need, it could be a diagonal, so we don't really need to go too below. So if you want to give it max room, then you're under the 6.5, that's 3.6 to 1. You want to tighten up and say, I don't want you too far below that pivot there on my 50, because I'm buying on the assumption that if it turns here, it's going to hold this wave 1. Well, I might front run that by just a little bit. Now I've got 11.5 to 1. Right, with that tight a stop. Now you might get stopped. I mean, I'd rather take the small stop. Usually, I'll take the small stop, and if I see signs of it going again, I'll go after it again, because that risk is so small. That's not going to hurt me. So those are things to watch for, and just a good lesson on how to use pitchforks to take advantage when you have these kind of swings happening and you're trying to get a handle on where we are. And we've got multiple counts, multiple scenarios, and we're looking to get clarification and disqualify some of the alternates. But right now, at this point in time, we can't disqualify any of them. They're all potentially in play. This still remains our all-time high and a valid potential intermediate top. Right? So in doing the same thing here, right? If we do this and we pull on the 4-hour, right? Here's our target here. So you cannot disqualify this potential corner pocket trade with this potential outcome. You see that? So until we break that, here's your target right there with a return to this median line, and there's the algo target, the negative 23.6. All right, so right with the Vegas wave. Note how the Vegas wave would pick that up right there as well. So you can't be, the idea is to be prepared and not be surprised. So if this is going to come down and complete this correction, where is it likely to go? Well, there's your median line, and there's your negative 23.6. There's your Vegas wave. You got a lot of things telling you that would be potentially an area to be looking for opportunity for the long side. All right, there. How am I doing? That's 25 minutes. Okay, I'll wrap it there, but I've got a few other things to show you today. Okay, that's it for now.